All right, we're going to go through consent items. There is one change on the consent items on page 2-2 under the Bingaman's report. Near the bottom of the page, it says July 1, 6, and 18. It's actually the 28th. So if that can be noted as a potential date. Can I have someone moved by Mayor Verbandovic? Hold on.
I will move them. If I just want to make a quick comment on number 2, so it's reflected in the public record. Did I need to pull it out? Oh, Scott's pulling it out.
That's okay. It doesn't matter who pulls it out at this point.
Okay, so I'll move that we pull number 2 out.
And Councillor Gazzola, are you looking to pull any out?
I was going to move it.
Okay.
But then I have some questions on 2. I had a question on 3, and staff have cleared it up, but maybe they should mention it. And I have 4 and 5. Little quick questions.
All right, so we are pulling out 2, 4, and 5. So let's deal with number 3. Yes. Are you pulling out number 3?
No, but I do have a conflict on, pardon me.
On number 3?
Conflict number 3. I live right nearby.
Okay. All right, let's deal with number 3. Let's just get something accomplished. All right. It's been moved. Those in favor? Opposed? No, one conflict noted. That carries. All right. We have to vote on moving 2, 4, and 5 out of consent. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. All right. Number 2. Councillor Davey.
Sure. I have some concerns with this. First is I would, unless staff has strong objection, due to the success of the Ever After Music Festival, I would actually change the decibel level under Clause D to 55 as it was for that event. First thing. And second thing, I have a question of staff on it, and it is there a way, because there hasn't been, I don't recall there ever being a number of exemptions like this all at once, especially while council and committee are not sitting. Is there a mechanism we can put in place to sort of, I don't know how to exactly phrase the question, but to approve them pending how the events go? So if we find that we're having issues after the first 6 events, then staff can have the discretion to tweak, change, or revoke those noise exemptions.
Gloria?
Through the chair, are you just specifically referring to the dates that we're not sure of, or all of them?
I'm comfortable approving the ones that are confirmed under that 55 limit, but the ones that we don't know, well, obviously, some of them are before that, but I guess just the point would be, can we empower staff to be able to use discretion in terms of the feedback, if there is any, in terms of negativity from the community?
Mr. Michael May.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think what you could do is, if Council was so interested, on the page, on 2-2 of the report, you could approve the recommendation with any amendments you might want to make today, and then pass another motion delegating approval for the noise exemptions for the last 3 bullets on that page to staff to complete, since Council won't have an opportunity to do so.
Okay, so I would actually make that amendment.
Okay.
Through the chair, if I can just add a comment.
Yes.
There is a representative here from Bingaman's, and that first bullet with the June dates are probably not a go. But just, we can leave them on there, but they've said that they don't think that anything will be happening on those dates, so it'll be just the remaining ones.
So those are not a no-go. That's what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. All right, we have lots of questions. Mayor Urbanovic.
Thank you. Not a question as much as a comment,
Go ahead.
if I can, very quickly. I will support the motion as is amended by Councillor Davey as the ward councillor. I did want to, though, because certainly around this horseshoe, I and others that were critical with some of the noise issues we've had in the past around the Electronic Music Festival. And while I'm not happy that they went an hour past, and I know our bylaw is dealing with that through their normal processes, I do want to acknowledge publicly that I appreciate the investment that was made in a better sound system that overall created the kind of environment where we had very minimal complaints, but allowed a successful event to continue going forward in the community for that age demographic. And so I wanted that officially noted in the minutes and on the tape, because while I believe it's appropriate to provide criticism when there are issues, it's also equally important to acknowledge when we've been able to see some progress in being able to address some of those issues with the new array sound system.
Councillor Zola.
Yeah, my question originally was, it notes here 65 dBA, and I wanted to know what the ever after, what was used for ever after.
55.
55, and that's why you want to go to that. Yeah, and that was my question, okay? But the mayor brings up something, and I've heard a number of people talk about it, that they're, and I just want to clarify, did we give an ultimatum that the music had to stop at 9 o'clock on that issue? Or was the ultimatum that you couldn't break the noise after 9 o'clock? You could go to whatever time you wanted, provided you don't break the noise issue.
I'm sorry, is that with regards to these ones or the previous
but it's
one?
regards to what the mayor brought up.
Well, I don't want to get into ever after and all the questions that we have with regards to that.
Why did you let the mayor bring it up?
He made a comment that it was successful.
The only comment I'm trying to answer is to the public that have said that we had a rule and the rule was broken, or what are we?
And bylaws dealing with that.
Pardon?
Bylaws following up with that the bylaw was broken.
Well, do you want to let the public know what our decision is, or is that a secret, or what?
Our decision about what?
That apparently they broke the rule. What was the penalty for breaking the rule?
Is that your question?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Gloria.
Through the chair, I think it's important to note that the noise bylaw is actually in effect 24 hours a day. So in order for a charge to be laid, there has to be excessive noise that meets the threshold for the courts. And my understanding of council's exemption was that they could go to 55 decibels up till 9 p.m. So from 9 p.m. forward, if nobody was complaining and there were no violations, then the bylaw wasn't being broken.
And that's the point I wanted to clarify. So they could go beyond it without breaking the law, without breaking the intent of the law, as long as they stayed within the rule.
The 55 dB.
Yeah,
correct.
okay. Then that's because the gentleman that asked it is a member of our community that deserves an answer. Okay, thank you. I have questions on 4 and 5.
Yeah, we're not there yet. Councillor Marsh?
I'm happy to support the amendment. I just want to ask about whether or not the Binghamton's representative or staff had considered for the Sundays, which are, I believe, August 19th as well as September 9th, and then the Wednesday, July 18th, whether or not we would consider, since they are work nights or camp nights or school nights, regardless, that it would go till just 9 p.m. rather than 10 p.m. Go ahead, Gloria.
Through the chair, it's my understanding from speaking to Bingamins that none of the events being considered this summer are electronic dance music. So they are just comparable to what we know so far to date of the acts that have been brought forward. I can say that Bingamins has had acts there in the past, and we have not had issues with them, such as the Country Music Festival. We had nominal complaints, as well as some others, Frosh Circus that happens there. And so I don't anticipate that the ones that are happening this summer are going to be on anywhere near the same level as the EDM that occurs there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you feel 10 p.m. is a reasonable end time to the noise bylaw exemption?
Through the chair, I think given the acts that are here, that would be reasonable. It's also in line with the events that we promote through special events in the downtown. So I think 10 p.m. would not be unreasonable, especially throughout the summertime.
Okay, I mean, and that's fair. I am also cautious about the unknowns. They're not naming what we're giving an exemption for, so I'm glad that we're going to be deferring that to staff, and would just ask that when staff consider other events that come forward, if they are more the heavy bass music, that we are considerate of the bedtimes of the surrounding neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions and comments for that one, so we're going to deal with it right now. As amended by Councillor Davey, with the 55 decimal and amendment to staff to give them the authorization to approve the ones that aren't currently scheduled. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, number 4, Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions, and the first one is, and I checked with staff, and I just want to clarify that members of this organization who are contributing to this program, I wanted to make sure that they receive income tax receipts for their donations, and I understand the answer is yes. So, yeah.
Bob?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Yes, in fact, as a affiliated support group, they do have access to the charitable donation program the city offers. And in fact, I believe the club already has a potential donor lined up to take advantage of that.
Okay, that's good. The other thing, it talks about taking the money you need out of a capital account. Do we not have, I thought at one time we had an account for loans to organizations like this, and I wondered why it wouldn't come out of there. Not that it makes a great deal of difference, but...
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe a year or two ago, the community loan program was disbanded. That money was moved into the neighborhood reserve, and so we no longer have that fund.
Oh, okay, that's fine. And then the final thing is, this is fairly onerous on the organization, and I wondered if there was any consideration of allowing them 5 years to pay it back instead of the 4. And, I mean, it's an asset that will last us a considerable period of time. I would just hate to have to see the organization to get so tight on their funding, whereas if we allowed it as a 5-year period instead of a 4-year period payback. I have no doubt that we're going to get the money back. So,
Bob?
Through you, Madam Chair, the 4-year period is actually proposed by the club itself, but something that we could look at in negotiations.
yeah, I'm sure they were very thankful for whatever they get, but and they may have not wanted to push it, but I think it's worth it.
We have some representatives from the club here. I don't know if you want to answer the question or not. Whether you want 4 or 5 years to pay back. You can come down to the podium if you don't mind, please.
Yes, thank you. Yes, as a treasurer for the club, we feel very confident in the 4-year program payback, just because we have our members contributing to a capital improvement fund. That amount of money for the annual payback would be what we would be taking in from our members. To your point, 5 years would be more flexible. I'd leave that up to council, but 4 years we're comfortable with as well.
Mm-hmm. I would like to move 5 years. I think it gives the organization a little more flexibility. I mean, it's a tremendous thing. It's a win-win situation. We get a building with a real improvement, and it's paid. It doesn't cost the taxpayers a penny. So whether we allow them 4 years or 5 years, I would like to give them the 5-year period.
Okay, you'd move that amendment. Okay. So with that, we'll vote with the amendment to move it from 4 to 5 years. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. All right, now we're on to the financial plan for the Kitchener Water Distribution System. Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah, I'll go over this quick. I was a little confused. It's a 5-year, it's a 6-year plan that we do every 4 years. Like, we're approving this for 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23. Did we not already approve 2018 and 2019 when we did the 2014 plan?
Angela?
Through the chair, that's the requirement of the regulation. They lay out a time period that you need to respond to, and also we have to apply for our new license within 6 months of the expiration date. Yeah. So we're almost applying, almost a year before it actually expires. Sort of similar to your passport.
Okay, that's a good example, then. You have to get it before. It doesn't really mean a great deal to us, right? We've already approved the budget, and we're just really restating things to fit into their way of dealing with it, right? There's really no bearing on us at all.
Through the chair, that's it exactly. They have a certain format that they want us to apply in because they're getting the same information from all the municipalities. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, no further questions. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. I've been asked if we can move number 10 up, the Brownfield Remediation Program application for 1 Adams Street. Did anyone have any questions on that? Councillor Marsh?
Yes. I want to know, what are the site completion requirements, if any, before we begin the initiation of the Brownfield Remediation Program? So I'm asking that because I have heard from many residents living in the Victoria Commons area that the original plans are still not completed. There are things that are left undone, and I'm just wondering if the Brownfield program is tied at all to completion of the site plan.
Brian?
Through the chair, the Brownfield program, the TIG and the remediation is separate from the site plan process.
Okay, so we are obligated to, once the project is, that the remediation has been completed, to begin this next step.
Then the application comes forward. Yes.
Okay. And so is there any precedent set for requiring that the site plan be completed before we initiate this? Like, would that be, would we be allowed to do that if I were to put forward an amendment to require that?
Through the chair, no, not necessarily.
Not necessarily. It doesn't help me.
Hold on. Mr. Chapman might be able to help.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'd look for Corey to confirm it, but I believe this is the subject of a community improvement plan, which is through a regulated process, and so we need to go back and see what the terms and conditions were of that CIP before we could talk to you about whether or not it would be appropriate to amend it. And so what I'd suggest is the application in front of you today is compliant with the current terms of the program, to approve it on that basis, and we can report back on your question around whether or not there's a potential and what it would take to link it to the site plan process.
And we can do that before council? Can we?
We can try and get an answer before council. All I would suggest is that the current applicant has applied under the auspices of the current program, and so my suggestion would be to consider it under those terms and conditions, but going forward, we can look at the question that you've raised, but we'll try and get an answer back before council.
Thank you very much.
All right, Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I was of the assumption on this that the program's in place. There's nothing we can do. They fulfill all the requirements of the program, so we have to go along with it. The only reason I'm questioning because the last time we dealt with this, I wanted to make sure that we take another look at the program itself. And I think that, if I'm not wrong, that's up for renewal or review currently or within the next year or so. Is that right?
Through the chair. So the region is going to be reviewing their brownfield program over the upcoming year, and we will be reviewing ours in conjunction with them.
Yeah. So there's really nothing we can do on this. They qualify. They've done everything that they need to qualify, and therefore we really don't have a choice.
Through the chair, they met all the requirements under the program, and accordingly they're eligible for the funding.
Yeah. Right. Thank you.
Councillor Yunetsky.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. On page 10.6, there's a chart there, a table showing the payback schedule. How come there's no payments in 2026 and 27?
Through the chair, that's based off the phasing of the development. So in the 2026 and 2027, it's not anticipated that there will be any phasing that will be coming forward for the TIG, and the last phase will be in 2028.
Okay, because I was just wondering whether 2028 could be bumped up to 2 years ahead of time, but that's not recommended?
This is based off the estimate that we have currently.
I'm sorry, say it again?
This is based off the estimate that we have currently of the different phases for the project and when it will be completed.
Okay. The other question I have is, how did you arrive at a cap of $2,025,000? It's the bottom of page 10.5. I see somehow it's different than the figure at the bottom of 10.2, $2,006,000. I hope you understand that.
Sorry.
So at the bottom of page 10.5, it talks about the city's cap being $2,025,000. And then when you look at page 10.2, there's a $2 million financial assistance of $2,006,000. So
okay, sorry, I don't have the page numbering. Are you referring to the regional DC brownfield exemption?
He's talking about Table 1 provides an estimate payment. The city's share of the TIG would be capped at $2,025,687.
oh, so the one on page bottom 10.2 is a regional portion. Is that what you're saying?
Can I try to explain?
So in the table, use Corey's copy, he's got the numbering. So on the table under eligible remediation costs,
Yeah.
it's $7.8 million. Then we deduct other regional programs that are available to the applicant. So in this case, it's the environmental grant of $20,500, and then the regional DC brownfield exemption of $2,619,000. We don't participate in those programs. Those are regional programs.
Okay, I got you there. And one last question. On top of page 10.5, there's an assessment value of the property being in 2011, and then there's that's the pre-value, and then there's the post-value, which is $268 million, which is a huge increase because of the development, which is fine. Of that increase, then so much is broken down into the dollar segment, which is the middle of the page, in terms of pre-taxes and post-taxes from 14,000 for the city portion up to $1 million plus. What is that in terms of an assessment growth? That we look at our budget that with new development we have a growth of 1% or something, but this seems to be just 1% just for this one project itself. Is that correct, or am I wrong?
Through the chair, that's correct.
So maybe during budget times, the increases that were shown should be much higher? I don't know, that's something for finance to comment on.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
Through the chair, because we are covering, the assessment increase is covering off part of the cost in terms of this program. It is over that extended time frame. So you wouldn't see the full increase, obviously, in year one as part of the budget process, but every year when we do see increased assessment growth, it is related to properties where that increase in assessment has occurred.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Just very quickly, extending from some of Councillor Gazzola's comments as well, we don't really have much input on this. They meet the criteria. I don't recall council or committee ever informing this process in any way. So my question is, why isn't this a consent item? Like, would staff be comfortable if these are consent items going forward? Because
this isn't a consent item.
No, I'm saying it should be a consent item.
Okay,
that's my question. Why isn't it a consent item if we have, there's no ability to us to inform it?
Dan?
Through the chair, it's only our observation that we've never not had this sort of discussion around each application, and so we felt it's important to put a time allotment to it. We agree with you. We have very little discretion but to approve a compliant application.
Okay, so I guess you're neutral in terms of it being a consent item or not is what I'm hearing back. Okay, thank you.
And I forgot, Mr. Robson's here as a delegation. Did you want to say anything?
Just a couple.
Yeah, go ahead.
Quickly, I acknowledge.
Sorry, I should have let you go first. My apologies.
My name is Craig Robson. I'm acting for the owner of the property on the TIG application only, as I distance myself from the site plan. I will communicate the concerns of committee to the clients so that they're aware of those concerns. I do not belittle those concerns at all. There is another company involved in the site, and they may well be having some arguments, I'm not sure, but there's a builder company, developer company, and it gets a little complicated sometimes, as I understand it, from watching from the sidelines. I would only like to say I support the report, and I once more thank city staff for helping us get through a difficult process.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have one more question. Did you want to go ahead first, Corey?
Through the chair, I was just going to clarify. I've had a chance to read through the actual brownfield program, and I was going to clarify Councillor Marsh's request, if you wish.
Yeah, go ahead.
So simply put, so the requirements of the program simply state that the redevelopment plans must comply with all city policies, which means they must be able to get a site plan approval. The carrying out of the site plan is really for the site plan process and our letter of credit process. So my read of this is we would not be able to hold this up because they haven't been fully complying with some of the obligations of their site plan. We have a different process by which we would implement or follow up on those things that still have to be completed.
Go ahead,
So I didn't quite catch, did you say letter of credit program? So with the site plan implementation, they have a letter of credit that would be refundable upon completion, is that correct?
That's our typical process, yes.
Okay, good, thanks.
Councillor Fernandez.
Just a quick question. What is our remaining balance in our brownfield remediation program?
Jonathan? Or Brian? Or whoever?
Through the chair, based on the 2018 budget at the end of the year, we were looking at $1.5 million still sitting in that account. And this TIG was also included in that projection. So it is included in the capital forecast for that account in terms of the overall balance.
Can you just remind us how funding goes into that program now?
Through the chair, so as part of the capital or the annual budget process and the capital budget, we fund that program every year with an annual contribution. So it varies between, depending on the requests, but it can be anywhere from $500,000 per year all the way up in our projections to 2.7, depending on, the needs associated with applications that we know are in the process and accommodating those in terms of the forecast.
So the funding comes through requests throughout the year into the brownfield remediation program, right? Is that what? Unfortunately, when I have my mic on, sometimes I can't hear. So
through the chair, based on the TIGs that we know about, we do set and earmark money within that account and set it aside. So where the program is built on additional assessment coming in, we are actually putting money aside ahead of that, knowing that these TIGs are likely to proceed with approval at a later stage.
Okay. Do you see that there will come a time when we won't have enough in there to continue promoting the brownfield remediation program? I guess that's kind of a concern that I'm having, is that this is a substantial amount of money that we're using, and it's a good use of that money. But what happens if we have a request that's much higher than what we have in our bucket, so to speak?
Through the chair, because as part of the budget process, we do provide funding to this program. We do look at it annually to see what our obligations are. I couldn't speculate related to additional applications that might be received for properties. But I think as the region is looking at the program, it will give us an opportunity to also look at what our obligations might be over the next 10 years and sort of forecast out what our needs might be.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a good proactive approach since the region is looking at that. We'll sort of tag into that as well. Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's all the questions that we have. So I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, we'll now move on to item number 6, which is the Boulevard Beautification Bylaw and Program, and Gloria's here to answer any questions. Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, Gloria, are we going to have bylaw officers proactively look at these boulevards if they're being modified, or are they going to be applying for an application?
Go ahead, Gloria.
Through the chair, we won't have an application process. It'll be, the Neighbourhood Development Office is working on a guide that's going to outline for residents the do's and don'ts and what they can and can't do. So we won't proactively be looking for them, but I think with staff being out there, if we were to notice anything that was a safety concern, we'd certainly be addressing it. But we would be leaving it up to residents to follow the regulations and follow the how-to guide.
Okay. Anyways, regardless, I think it's an excellent report, and I'm prepared to move the recommendation.
Okay. Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Madam Chair, 2 questions to Gloria. On page 6.4, why are the herbs and vegetables exempted from this?
Through the chair, what we found was other municipalities that have this bylaw also do not permit gardens or vegetable gardens or herb gardens, and the rationale for that is that the boulevard area is exposed to exhaust from vehicles regularly, which is not ideal for people consuming those products. Also, people often walk their dogs, and this is a high traffic area for dogs, which I think may pose some concerns for people as well, but also I think will frustrate people if they're growing vegetables and somebody's dog is using it as a bathroom area.
Somebody's dog, sorry?
Sorry?
I missed the last part. No, I got it, okay. And on page 6.3, similar question to the Councillor Ioannidis. How are we going to police? I've seen many front yards that are totally overgrown, covered in weeds, and sometimes when I've talked to those people, they've used words like, well, it's natural, or it's a wild garden, or how are you going to police that?
Through the chair, I think we've gone through and we've worked with several divisions throughout the corporation as well as residents to look at and anticipate what may be problematic. So I think we've tried to identify height restrictions, location of where things can be planted. The other thing is we deal with that now where people will say they've naturalized their lawn. Naturalized still means that there has to be some sort of order to it. It can't just simply be that you've let your grass grow and you're calling it naturalized. So I think we would apply the same kind of standards. We can even look at maybe doing a definition of naturalized in the bylaw so that it's a little bit more clear and clearly defined.
Okay. I just added on my other question in Victoria Park, that dogs and geese, I guess it would be. Thanks.
Councillor Yanetsky?
Yeah, just one question as a follow-up to the question asked about vegetable gardens between the curb and the sidewalk, and I understand your answer. Yet when I look at your report, you say that staff are recommending for something like that, creating a vegetable garden on your front lawn, subject to sight lines. Well, the front lawn could be right up to the sidewalk as well. I mean, wouldn't that be an issue as well, or do you determine as the property line as opposed to the sidewalk? And then where is the property line unless it varies from property to property?
Through the chair, we already have a bylaw in place that addresses hedges and other site obstructions, which requires the sight lines for the driveway visibility and the corner visibility triangle to be kept clear or under 3 feet. So we would be applying those same regulations if somebody chose to have a vegetable garden on their front lawn. They'd still have to comply with any other regulations.
Well, I understand that, but what happened to, let's say they comply with the regulations, they only have it 2 feet high or something like that. It's still close to the sidewalk.
It is still close to the sidewalk, but I think that's your own property as opposed to using city property and then asking us to patrol that for you. So I think that's where we see it being a little bit different, is somebody could do what they wanted on their own front lawn, and as long as it's complying with site visibility regulations, we would be a little bit more hard-pressed to not permit it. Whereas on our own property, I think if we're starting out, it may be a good starting point to not permit them.
Well, I don't think it's going to be an issue because I don't think I've ever seen front lawn gardens, vegetable gardens in front lawns. So, but I just thought that's an option that you provided. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Fernandez?
Just to Councillor Yanetsky's point, I have seen front yards that are vegetable gardens, so not my place, no. Is this going to tax our bylaw staff? I mean, or are they going to be using the time that they're already maybe enforcing parking or other issues that they may already be out in that neighborhood? Is that how they're going to be assessing these boulevards?
Through the chair, that's correct. So we would be dealing with them on a complaint basis, again, unless we note a safety issue. I think the bigger challenge for us is these are already existing out there. People are already doing this and have been for a number of years, and right now we don't have any regulations in place, which makes it tricky for us when we do get a complaint. So I think this will at least provide us some guidelines of what people can do, and we've also got the recourse in there to be able to address it if it's something that we're not happy with or that doesn't meet the requirements.
Okay. So how will we share this information out to the public? I know we did extensive, Love My Hood, engagement, the campaign, and all the residents that we talked to who said that they wanted to do this, they thought this was a great idea. And you talked about the urban forestry staff who are already out there trying to work with getting better trees to survive. Can we do a combination of education while our urban forestry staff are already out on some of these sites?
Through the chair, we engaged with urban forestry, and some of the recommendations that we're proposing actually have come from them. So I think it's certainly something we can do collectively with them. We're also looking at, as I had mentioned, the Neighbourhood Development Office is putting together a guide that urban forestry has contributed information to. So that's a way that we're looking at educating the public, as well as we'd be working with communications to put that out.
Okay. I think that certainly this is a great opportunity for us on council who might be hitting the campaign trail to share this information as well as through all of our community centers. I think that's a great avenue to share this information. How will we deal with, and I already received an email, about a pushback email on this, because beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? And so I think it's going to be difficult sometimes for us to speak to what somebody thinks is a naturalized garden, and I know we have standards, and we apply those standards to properties all the time. Do we foresee any legal pushback on any of this, or are we able to say this is our property, which could result in a few other, well, then you're not cutting the grass often enough, or you're not cutting the grass at all. So I mean, I think this is a fantastic way to reduce some of the work that we may have across the city, but I see a small little nugget of legalese that may actually be pushed back. Have we sort of looked at that?
Through the chair, the bylaw does speak to maintaining the boulevard and keeping it, if you've got grass and weeds under 8 inches, and the maximum height for plant types, as well as stone sizes and stuff. So I think if somebody's not within the parameters of what they're permitted to do, we would have the ability to have some recourse there. Whether or not somebody approved of the types of plants somebody placed there and they didn't like them probably wouldn't be something that we could address.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, I have just a couple of questions, specifically around page 6-5 with respect to new subdivisions, the top bullet there. Does anybody have the answer? It's probably not you, Gloria, but maybe. Of the approximate time it takes for the city to assume these from the developers, the boulevards?
Through the chair, I did speak with engineering staff about that, and some subdivisions can be unassumed for up to 10 years. So what we're proposing to put in is that if somebody is in one of those newer subdivisions, that they would have to get permission from the developer prior to, if the subdivision hasn't been assumed by the city, they would have to have that conversation with the developer since they're still looking after the warranty period. And then they'd have to, if they got that permission, then they could comply with this. So the guidebook that we're putting together is referring people to engineering staff to make that call to engineering. They can let them know if it's been assumed or not, and then who they need to contact in order to have the discussion about what they'd like to do on the boulevard.
I'm concerned. I know you're trying to do the best approach, but I'm concerned because the rest of the city is going to be able to do this, and a lot of the time people want to do it when they get into their new home. And I don't know if the developers are going to want the risk of that. So I'm concerned about that one specifically. And just other than the guide, how we're going to communicate that, because they're going to see other people doing it, or they might have done it at their previous house. And now they can't do it at their current home.
Through the chair, the only suggestion I can make with that is if we reach out to the builders and the developers and let them know that once this passes, if they could pass that information on to the builder or the homeowner that's building their home. I know building does put out some sort of a new homeowner's guidebook to let them know what they can and can't do. So maybe that's something that we can add to.
I think you definitely need to. I wouldn't rely on the builders to relay any information to owners, the new owners. It tends not to get relayed. So anything we can do, because I don't think it's fair that you aren't able to, but I can appreciate why it's there. Okay, that's all the questions I have. It's been moved by Councillor Ioannidis and a recorded vote's been called. Carried unanimously. Next, we will move on to the special event permit bylaw and the street party event program. And there are staff here to answer any questions that you have. Councillor Marsh?
I'd like to move it.
Okay. There's no questions that I'm seeing. So, Councillor Fernandez?
Yes. I understand the rationale for some of the changes that we see here, and I had a conversation, I'm trying to think of who I had the conversation with, that we are becoming a bit of a victim of our own success with, this explosion in street parties. I think it was you, Mr. Hildebrandt, because you're smiling, so I'm quoting you. Some of the conversations I've had with some of the community members is that they're concerned that what happens when over 200 people show up? How are we going to enforce this? Is it their responsibility to now enforce and tell people, sorry, we said our event was only going to be 200 and under? It does bring a little bit of a level of uncertainty and worry for some of our community citizens around this.
Does anybody want to answer that question? Ken?
Thank you, through you, the chair. Valid question. I would suggest at this point in time, staff don't have a formal plan to address that. At the same time, I'd like to think that we would have the ability to react when it becomes a problem. Yeah, you pose a valid question, and short of staff going out to every event and counting the number of people there, maybe I'll ask if there's other people here at the panel could speak to it, but what concerns we would have from a liability standpoint should it go above 200 people when we've not asked them for the insurance coverage based on that.
Right, and I don't want to see an event that everybody's having a good time and then somebody arrives and said, this is clearly more than 200 people and you need to disband. That would, I'm sure, leave a very bad taste in people's mouths, especially after all of the wonderful work we've done around Love My Hood and community engagement.
Mr. Reedman would like to answer further.
Through the chair, so the street party event petition, starting on page 7-13, will give the neighborhood office an idea of how many people are sort of engaged in the process, and that will help inform decisions moving forward, whether it goes beyond the 200 people for insurance requirements or stays below that. So I think the neighborhood office will have a good understanding of the number of people as the process is going through, like the approvals.
I'm getting a sense we're not really quite sure what's going to happen, and yes, we have a document that they have to fill out, and we've got, how to plan a street party. Hopefully that will give people a sense of what the guidelines are, but I think we need to get our head around the possibility that something may get bigger and how we're going to deal with that. The other thing that, and I'm glad to see the change about the number of residents that are going to be required to sign, because it's very difficult to get 100% of your neighbors to agree that you're going to close your street and have a party. So 60% is certainly a lot more positive. It's more than half. And again, how will bylaw deal with those complaints that we might get saying, I didn't support this and I didn't want the street party and now it's too much noise, and have we put our heads around that one?
Gloria?
Through the chair, we've had this come up in the past where there is a neighborhood event and there's one or two people that don't partake and then complain. So I think the nice thing about these is that we do have to have a contact person and that phone number. So we would, if we received a complaint, we would reach out to them and have a conversation about what the concerns were. And then I'd have no issue going back to that person that's lodged the complaint and just explaining. A lot of times it's just knowing when the end time is and what to expect will often satisfy people. So I think we'd have to go back and forth and try to facilitate that conversation and mediate it for the time being, but I think it's something we could track, and if it became an ongoing issue, that we could maybe have a conversation about down the road.
Yeah. Sadly, in my area, last year, I think it was, there was a gathering at somebody's house. I don't know whether it was a wedding or a birthday party or something that got a little loud, and one of the neighbors took serious offense, and it ended up in a very bad altercation. I think that's what I hate to be. I don't want to be the person who puts the wet blanket over street parties or neighborhood events. I really think they're so critical to building our community. But the reality is not everybody gets along with their neighbors, and so we have to figure out, I think, put safeguards in place so that people don't get angry with each other, or people who are feeling maybe left out, that we, put those safeguards in place so that we can do a good, positive thing. Mr. Hildebrandt's just sat down, so I think he may have some comments.
Mr. Carmichael wanted to say something, and then I'll turn to Mr. Hildebrandt.
Yes, thank you. Through the Chair, further to Mr. Reben's comments about the NDO office having somewhat of an ability to manage the number of people going to the event, our staff will issue the special event permit, and through that process of working with the organizer, we'll be very clear to ensure that we communicate that requirement, and that the requirement for insurance is dictated on the number of people. So we'll clearly advise that should it exceed that 200 people, that they're doing so at their own risk, I would suggest. So I think it will be very effective if we communicate that clearly to all the organizers, and that should be an effective way to keep the limits on it.
Mr. Hildebrandt?
Yes, thank you, Chair Galloway, CLOC. Through the Chair, there will be staff interact. There are staff that interact with people who are doing these street parties right off the bat. So, neighborhood liaison staff or our community center facilitator staff work with the community, and they're able to flag a lot of the time when there's going to be issues, and actually they help problem solve these issues through in order to have a successful event. In the event that a street party goes over, then it's noted, and then we will work with the group afterwards to kind of talk through that with the organizers, and then if they want to do this event into the next year, how we might plan for the number of people that are coming.
Okay, thank you. So one more question. There was some conversation with one of my residents who said that there was a request for porta potties. Is that part of this program?
Sorry, I'll just jump in.
Yeah, go ahead, Darren.
One of the reasons that we put through the chair, sorry. One of the reasons we set that limit of 200 is that's generally the amount that you would not require porta potties. So with less than 200 people, you can easily expect people just to jump into their homes and use the facilities there. The event that you were working with, we were expecting more than 200, up to 3 to 4, and so that's where the porta potty requirement came in. So that's the advantage of having that 200 people cap, is that safety protocols are less, as well as the porta potty facilities would not be required.
Okay, thank you. I'll have comments.
Councillor Schneider?
Thank you, Chair Galloway, CLOC. Just to understand, on the application form that the group of neighbors would be applying for, would it ask for the number of households invited and possibly the estimation of the numbers that would live in those households? So say 10 households are invited to this party and there's 3 people per household, you'd have a better idea of the numbers, that sort of thing?
Through the chair, we don't currently have that on the application form, but it is expected that everyone on the street that's impacted would be involved in the petition signing and therefore be invited to the event. Now, recognizing you may want to invite more than just the people on that street. So there certainly could be an option to encourage more people to be invited if that's the direction.
Okay, no, I see this as a great positive. I wonder maybe possible to maybe send a digital copy of the application form to members of council so we can understand more fully what you're doing.
I believe that's in.
Oh, it's in there. Sorry.
7-13.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Okay, that's all the questions that have appeared. It's been moved by Councillor Marsh. Comments? Councillor Fernandez?
Yeah, I think that as we move forward with our Love My Hood and the great opportunities that we see people taking to build a greater and stronger community, I think sometimes we're sort of pulled up by our bootstraps and like, oh, we forgot. We didn't think about this. We didn't think about how fast this was growing. We didn't think about implications and liabilities, insurance. And I mean, what better panel could we have than all of you sitting here who have probably been discussing this for the last couple of months and saying, this has been so successful, now we make sure that everybody is safe and everybody is happy and is enjoying those special events that our neighbors are offering for us. I really appreciate that we've put some guidelines around. I was asked by a member of my community to say that she was a little bit upset with the whole porta potties and the restriction to 200 people, but I think that our great staff liaison, Sarah Anderson, has been able to work with her and build that event in a more positive manner than what she was feeling it was going to be. So I look forward to supporting this and seeing many more events. Sorry, I have one question. The Festival of Neighborhoods, how does that tie into these events, or does it not? Because in a way, people are going to be having these events and then registering them for Festival of Neighborhoods. Sorry, I should have asked that earlier.
Go ahead, Darren.
Through the chair, you'll notice one of the sections in the how-to guide includes some resources and suggestions from Festival of Neighborhoods, so they've definitely been included in this. And we would certainly encourage them to register an event through the Festival of Neighborhoods afterwards as well.
Okay, I apologize for not being clear on reading it fully. Thank you.
Councillor Ioannidis?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair Galloway, Seelock. Yeah, I think just like the last item and now with this item, it's great to see that the city's taking steps to make the quality of life that our residents will enjoy, and hopefully maybe us members of council will be invited to these parties.
Councillor Yunetsky?
Yeah, this is a very good step forward. I'm going to be supporting this application. I think one of the drawbacks was concern of liability insurance that most groups have to get, and with us setting a standard up to 200, I think that eliminates that concern that a lot of the neighborhood and street groups would have. So it's a good step forward, and I hope it's quite successful.
Councillor Marsh?
Yeah, I just want to add that I think we should consider encouraging people who have multiple street parties a year to include a few dates in one petition, because it does take a lot of time to go door to door. So if you're planning one for the spring and then one for the fall, why not just add the two events on one petition?
Thank you. There's no further comments. I just want to say thank you for this report. I think it's a step in the right direction in assisting people with residents with trying to make sure that they have a step-by-step guide to help them. And I think this bylaw and this program will really make things a lot more clear for everyone, and hopefully that translates into more parties. So with that, recorded vote's been called. And that's unanimous. We will move on to the next item. The June Pioneer Park Community Center expansion update. And Mr. Hildebrand is going to give us a 5-minute presentation. And then we'll hear from Ms. Ritz, a delegation after.
Thank you, Chair Galloway Seelock. I will just give you a For my 5 minutes, I will introduce two reports, the first being the Dune Pioneer Park Community Center expansion, pages 81 to 86, and the second one, the update on the facility partnership with the Public School Board, pages 9.1 to 9.9. The first report, the Dune expansions, recommending $550,000 be added to the Dune expansion project budget, while the second report's recommending the city enter into a joint facility construction with the Public School Board at a cost of $2.9 million. I'm introducing both reports together because staff suggesting that both the expansion and the partnership with the Public School Board be funded the same way through the 2019 development charges. I'll briefly share some key points in each report and then wrap up my introduction with a couple of points on the funding approach. The Dune Pioneer Park Community Center expansion, staff received 3 tenders for the expansion, all came in over budget, the lowest approximately $1.14 million over budget. A third-party cost consultant suggested a combination of factors could have contributed to this variance in the pre- and post-tender cost, including increased activity in the construction market. Estimated construction costs may have been on the low range for the renovation and expansion. We only had 3 bidders, and there was a suggestion that some restrictions and complexities within our process may have also contributed. Staff have been able to bring the overexpenditure down by over half the amount. We've been able to find $510,000 in project savings, and the Dune Pioneer Park Neighborhood Association has contributed $80,000 to the expansion project. However, we still require an additional $550,000 in order to move this project forward. Regarding the facility partnership update, as part of the 2016 business plan, staff investigated possible partnership opportunities with both school boards for a joint school and community center in the Huron-Brigadoon area. In February 2017, staff were given direction to approach the school boards to work out details of a partnership. In March 2018, staff reported back of the possibility to partner with the Public School Board for a joint school and community center on the Tartan property, and this included an early on center as well as regional childcare. There are some specific and significant benefits to the City of Kitchener in participating in this partnership. Participating with the school board could save the City of Kitchener substantial dollars. It costs $2.9 million for approximately $2.9 million for 8,000 square feet if we were to build with the school board versus this would also the same amount of space would cost $4.1 million at least if we built alone. There's also the ability to leverage additional space, both with the school board, who's building a double gym at this site, and also with the Early On Center, who's going to be running programming at this site as well. This also brings space into the growing neighborhood as early as September 2020. And it also can create a significant community hub if we were to join in this partnership. An investigation of the site shows that there is sufficient space on the Tartan property to satisfy program requirements for each of the partnership. With regards to funding, staff are recommending pre-committing future DC funds for both projects. Based on the findings of our consultant, which we asked to take a look into this, there is going to be most likely an extra $5 million in development charges following the next DC study. As a result of this information, we're confident that the addition of these two community center spaces will not negatively impact funding available for other recreation facilities currently in the 10-year capital forecast. I can answer any questions.
Okay, we're going to not ask questions of staff. We're going to turn to the delegation first, and then we'll ask questions of staff. And so if Ms. Ritz could come down from the Dune Pioneer Park Community Neighborhood Association. And welcome. You have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
Thank you. I didn't expect to be back here, folks. But I'm here on behalf of the Dune Pioneer Park Community Association in support of staff's recommendation to add to the construction budget. I just have a few points to mention. As you all know, our expansion has been put off numerous times in the past, very numerous, and shouldn't be held up any longer. To go back to tender means we not only lose another year out of the center, but it will also result in the loss of precious square footage for the build. And again, as everybody knows, the community out there is growing substantially, and a smaller footprint will not meet the community needs. I do want to add that we are contributing the $80,000 to the build. And as a sideline, it isn't a for sure amount, but after we are done spending our budget on new equipment, any money we have left over, again, it would be after the build, but it will also be earmarked for some things in the center to help out with painting a room or doing something that we can do, whether it's buying our own furniture or whatever is there in the budget. So I wanted to mention that as well. We've already been displaced from the center, and that's dramatically increased our programming schedule. Last fall, we offered 129 programs. 42 of those were individual piano lessons per child, but there are still programs, so that was 129. Since the closure of the center, we were only able to offer 39, and 28 of those are the piano off-site lessons for the spring. And then, of course, we had to raise the prices of the programs as we pay rent to our community partners who offer us space. So overall, I feel the main factor here really is the community members are the ones who feel the effects of these delays the most. They have to go elsewhere for programming, or go without, or pay more to us for their programs because of the fact that we have to pay rent on off-site places. Without sufficient income, also, the DPPCA hasn't got the extra funds to put back into the community for charities, etc., the things that we do donate now into the community. So I respectfully ask on behalf of myself, my board, and our community that you please agree or certainly consider to the request for extra funding and let this project continue without any further interruptions. So thanks for your time, and if you have any questions for me.
Thank you. There appears to be a couple. Councillor Marsh, were yours of staff or the delegation?
Sorry, yes, it was.
Of the delegation or staff? Okay. Councillor Fernandez.
Yes. Thanks, Pam, for coming in and you know, sharing the work that has been done and the patience that you and your board have had for the last number of years, and especially around the closure of the community centre. You've done a remarkable job of trying to program in lots of different locations to try and accommodate our residents, and I know it has had not come without significant challenges. You indicate that you've got money set aside to help with the cost of this renovation, and I think that that's significant dollars and significant contribution from your board. Is this something that you had anticipated all along and have been building towards preparing that budget for the renovation when it was done?
Yeah, through the chair. Yes, even before my time as president, the talk of the expansion was happening, and there was money set aside, and we have just continued. We've been lucky enough to have a lot of programming and make some money on it, so we've set aside as much as we could for part of the towards the build. Somehow we didn't know where we were going with it or where it would end up, but and then also for new equipment, because the bigger the center, the more equipment we'll need. The older our equipment got, the more we have to replace it. So yes.
So you've had programming moved to different locations, and so you've lost actually from March until now an entire program season, right? While staff has been trying to work through this over tender process. Could you maybe tell us how many programs you've had to not host because you couldn't find the facilities? Because I think you've been doing a great job, but I know that the community has lost some programs just because you can't find facilities.
Through the chair, the programs that we were able to offer off-site have been 39 only. And again, 28 of those are that same group of individual pianos. So it's been very difficult for us to find. We've had to look for space, first of all, that was reasonably situated in the community, safe, easy access. People, don't want to drive 2 extra blocks. They say, oh, all the way down there. So, there's been a lot of factors. Plus, there just isn't a lot of space available. It's very difficult to get the schools. We only had one program that was moved to a school for our spring programming. And it's costly because we have to pay rent. None of them are giving us the free space. And then we have to increase the program cost. And the whole idea of the neighborhood association is to, because we're in a center, is to offer very reasonable program pricing.
Yeah, correct. And one of the other things that, sadly, with the heat that we have is our splash pad is not able to function either. So that's another component that the community center would have served as a cooling center for our community, and I know that the library is probably trying to accommodate that as well, but we've lost our splash pad in this interim. So your plea to get moving on this is certainly timely, both because of the heat and because we really want to move ahead on this. Thank you very much, Pam, for coming in, and thanks to the staff who've been trying to work through all of this with the community. I'm sure that there's been calls and people saying, what is going on? And so thank you for fielding those calls. I know sometimes that's not that easy to do that.
Thank you. Through the chair, if I can just comment, the splash pad has been an issue, not so much even with us, but through the center. A lot of people are asking why it can't be open while we're closed, and obvious reasons and safety and so on. It can't be open, but that is one of the biggest items.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Galloway Seelock. Pam, thank you and your board for coming in, and thank you for all you do to provide programming. With this newly expanded and improved Doon Pioneer Park Community Center, can you foresee maybe some new programs or programs that people have asked for in the past being able to be presented and offered?
Through the chair, for sure. That's part and parcel of the expansion. We just didn't have the room. We'll be able to find new instructors, and with the extra room and extra equipment and so on, I see us doing more than the 129 programs that we previously had, definitely.
That's fantastic. Now, in my ward, I have 2 community centers, and both of them have expressed to me at the board meetings that I attend that the programs they offer are also attended by people outside the ward that come from all over the city because of our new WebReg registration. So a person could take a program that necessarily isn't from the Doon Pioneer Park area. Do you find that that's the case with you as well in the past?
Through the chair, yes. We a lot of our participants, a lot of them come from the center or from the community in the catchment area, but yes, we've had more and more in the past coming in and registering and either getting in or being on the waiting lists, whatever the case may be.
Well, it's good to hear. No, it's great for Doon Pioneer Park, but it's great for the city overall, and I'm just a huge fan of our community centers, and I'm going to support this for sure.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Hi, Pam. Thanks for coming in. Just a question. Are you comfortable, there had to be, to actually get to the point that we're at, there had to be some changes to the initial tender. Generally speaking, you're in support. You're okay with the changes that staff's had to make in order to come in at the budget that we're at?
Well, we would have preferred we didn't have to, but overall, yeah, with the proposal, if I understand your question correctly, you're saying the changes they've had to make to come up with the shortfall.
Exactly.
We haven't really lost any square footage. Of course, it will if it has to go back to tender. Mm-hmm. We lost some original square footage in the beginning. In our steering committee meetings, the architect came in and, I got this and that, and the drawings were great, and we were looking at it, and we had 2 1,000 square foot rooms and a big double gym, and then as things progress, he comes back and it's like, we have to kind of cut down some. So we've crunched space already to the bare minimum, I feel, for the, not just for us and our programs, but even for the center itself, for any rentals you may have to do as the city rents it out or whatever. And just the community is growing so fast that, but as far as the square footage goes, we can live with what we have now.
That footprint, very good, thank you. That was my only question. I do want to thank you as well. I do notice as much of a financial challenge as it is for us, we do really appreciate the $80,000 that your committee's contributing, your association, pardon me. And just in a personal note, I know you guys take a real pride and ownership in that center, so I just want to thank you for coming in again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's all the questions we have for you. So now we'll go to questions of staff, and we'll start with Councillor Davey, and then Councillor Marsh, and then I'll go rest of the queue as ordered.
Just one question. I just wanted to 100% clarify. It seems like the members of the community are content with it, but it is staff's opinion that if we did go out to retender, we would not get a better price, and the square footage would likely come down as well in order to meet those targets. I just wanted to confirm that if I could. Mr. Hildebrand.
Through the chair, staff don't anticipate that the activity in the construction industry will change anytime soon. I think what will be added pressure to the budget if we were to retender would be inflationary costs. So I don't think that we would be able to do better.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Marsh.
Thank you. It's not really clear to me what the new changes are. How did we find the $500,000? And does it impact the KPL at all?
Through the chair. So we were able to find, although we didn't change square footage, we didn't reduce square footage, we did reduce the scope of work. So we found some of the items that we looked at was lowering the gymnasium roof. That was one significant piece. Removing a main entrance that was separate for the school board, and what we're going to do is make adjustments to operating hours for the community center to coincide, so we don't need a separate entrance. So that shouldn't affect the library. Removal of the divider in the gymnasium, and reducing the amount of glazing. Those were some of the big pieces that we did to reduce the scope.
Okay, great. And so all the partners are on board with this, right? Like I don't see the KPL here or the school board, but it's everybody.
Through the chair, none of the scope reductions are affecting the board, the library. I am keeping in close contact with Mary Chevreau.
Great.
And we do have other things to discuss with regards to the construction, and there's some changes that they would like to see that we need to discuss because there's code implications.
Okay, great. I think it's just, it was a challenge, to have in this budget no room for some of the accommodations that might need to be made during the construction period for the KPL branch. And so going forward, I just wanted to flag that maybe we should be looking at ensuring that from the beginning we're planning for the, additional budget items that might be needed if for during the construction part of the project when we have a partnership like that.
Sure.
Councillor Yunitsky.
Just a couple of questions. Further to your answer on the changes to the $500,000 bucks, was the elimination of the library door, some glazing you mentioned, the reduction of the height of the gym, and then it was the fourth one. I didn't catch that.
Removal of the divider in the gymnasium.
Sorry, say it again.
Removal of the divider in the gymnasium, the electronic divider that splits the gym.
Oh, I see. Okay, got that. Mm-hmm. Now, with the lowering of the height of the gym, height was it initially established at, and how much has it been reduced?
The gymnasium was about 4 feet higher than our regular gymnasiums at our other community centers, and so it was about the height of a high school gymnasium, which is much higher than what we traditionally have at our community centers and what we traditionally need at a community center. So we just brought it down, and it's just the same as other community centers.
So with the reduction in height, which sporting activities would it really affect in terms of the reduction? Would it be volleyball, badminton, basketball, or would they also be able to be functional within the reduced height and not cause a problem or a concern?
Through the chair, my experience is that the gymnasium heights that we have at our other community centers don't affect things like badminton, volleyball. We wouldn't be able to do anything on a competitive level. So if it's a competition tournament, then it might be a problem. But with our neighborhood associations that don't have competitions like that, it shouldn't be a problem.
So it's just basically a neighborhood facility. Basically, that's the intent.
That's the intent. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mayor Verbanovic.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks to the delegation for coming in, because I know they've been very patient through this whole process, and thank you to staff for the work that's been done to try to come up with a solution. I guess my only question that I have for staff as we move forward, and we've been in this place before with other projects where it's come in high, and then we've had to try to find some places to cut back on and add some money and do some partial cutbacks and so on. I guess what I just want to make sure is, are we comfortable with the 550 add-on that fundamentally we're not compromising anything in terms of the long-term functionality of the center? Because I think, while there are soft things we can do over time, the fundamental, building frame, addition part and so on, are we comfortable that we're still in a good place for the long-term needs of this community?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, we would be confident that this is comparable to the standards of the other community centers that we have across the city.
Okay, so it'll meet what the long-term sort of space needs are for the neighborhood?
Yes.
Or the community? Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I was concerned about the 510,000 reduction. I think most of the questions have been answered. What does removing the divider, what does that do? Is that something that can be added at another time, or?
Through the chair, we have roughed in a curtain. So the dividers that we initially had in the budget was for the big wall, the folding wall that is electronically put in place. And it needed some structurally, it needed reinforcement, and also a pocket built into the facility. That has been removed. However, if there's a need in the future, we do have a rough-in for a curtain that could come down and separate the gym.
Okay, so you could look after that. I keep hearing about the school board. The school board's not involved with this, is it?
Through the chair, no, that's the next report.
Yeah, okay, so this is just between the library and the community center, and with taking out the 510, everybody is still satisfied that everything is going to be met. I do have concerns about committing future DC charges, which we don't have all that information, but that's another issue. I wondered why the architect was off by so much. In your report, you talk about him. They're off by what, 27 and almost 28%. You explained perhaps 10% of that where they were off, but where did they blow the rest of it? And is there anything we can do about it?
So, through the chair, I think there were a number of factors outlined in the report that talks about sort of some of the reasons that we, in hindsight, which is always better than foresight, could account for the differences. I think part of the reason that we were so far off is that an oversight, I think, on the group that was doing this is that they used standardized projections for new construction only, whereas we have a renovation component, significant renovation component in this project. So it actually comes in higher. There's a higher cost per square foot for that. That wasn't accounted for. As well as I think there was an underestimation of the value of the construction going on in this market and what that's doing to availability of trades and contractors. So I think, well, it's typical to use standard yardsticks for costing. In this case, a closer look at local conditions would have been prudent, but that wasn't completed. Initially, we did it after the fact.
Okay, thank you. Moving now to the other community center.
We're only going to deal with, right now, the Dune Pioneer Park. I want to keep them separate even though comments were made. Is that okay? That's...
yeah, I guess. Let me see. Oh, okay, just one other question then, in that case. When was this originally on our capital forecast?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
When was this expansion originally on our capital forecast?
We had funding available 2017.
But it was on the capital forecast much before that.
Oh.
I think he means like how many times has it been delayed? So when was the first time it was supposed to be?
4 times. Through the chair, it's been moved 4 times.
Okay. Because I remember when that area was in the area that I represented back pre-2010. It was around. So okay, thank you.
Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Hildebrand. Mark, would this have any impact on Mill Cortland expansion or the Rockaway Centre?
Go ahead, Ryan.
Sure. Through the chair, according to our consultants, it should not have any impact on the timing of those. From a financial point of view, there may be other factors that come into play as we set priorities during the next DC study, but financially it should not impact either of those.
Thank you.
Councillor Fernandez?
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Hildebrand, for answering Councillor Gazzolla's question about the dividing wall, which somehow I missed in our conversations, that was not going to happen. So a curtain is definitely not as soundproof as a folding wall. Is there anything we can put in to prepare ourselves down the road for like a rough-in, like you would do in a bathroom, right? I mean, I know it's a smaller scale, a larger scale. Is there anything we can do to have something in there to, if we have some money down the road, or the community center, neighborhood association, that we could put that dividing wall in?
Through the chair, for the dividing wall that was included in the original drawings of the project, there's substantial structural reinforcement that's needed. Plus, we were actually building a portion of the wall out to accommodate for the dividers. If we were to build that, then we would lose the amount of savings that we received by eliminating them from the project. This decision wasn't made lightly. Staff did go back and kind of look at the other facilities in our community centers that have those types of dividers. Stanley Park was the one that was used most, just because of the school and that we have a relationship with the school, and we divide it based on that. The other facility that has a wall like that is Victoria Hills, and in fact, they hardly ever use it. They usually program the facility, the gym in its entirety for one program. So although it is a loss to the project, if Victoria Hills is any indication, it might not be missed that much.
All right, so you were talking about the rough-in or the construction for a possible future curtain. So that will be put into the construction of this project in this gym, so that if we do have an opportunity, what will that allow two parts of the gym to do?
Through the chair, programming-wise, what that allows us to do is it allows us to separate the gym. You're absolutely right that there won't be any type of sound barrier, so it would likely, you wouldn't have a yoga program going on with a basketball program, because yoga is so noisy. However, you can have different types of active programming for younger children and older children within the same facility, within the same room. So, and plus, we have to remember that we also have some excellent space already in that facility in the other multi-purpose rooms. So there's some programming things we could likely do to accommodate for programs that might want bigger spaces. So we've got that opportunity at the Dune Pioneer Park.
So I didn't ask originally, but if you have the number, I'd be curious to know what was the cost of that piece. Do you have that?
Through the chair, it came to about $60,000.
$60,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the reason I'm hesitating is that there were some other cost savings in another section of the build that was associated with that. So it was a little over $60,000.
Okay. So one can dream, I'm still going to dream for a minute. If we were to find through a sponsorship, through a donation, $60,000, would we be able to put that piece in? Or would it totally skew the project?
Through the chair, it could be added if there were resources to do it. I think the timeliness of being able to reincorporate that into the design would have to be taken into consideration. Given Mr. Hildebrand's comments about sort of the fact that it may or may not be a well-used amenity.
But it was a request, and I think it was part of the business plan, if I'm not mistaken, that to have that piece in there. So what would the maybe you can't answer this publicly, but if you can, in an email to me, maybe a copy to the rest of the council, if there was a drop-dead date that if funding could be found from other outside sources for $60,000, what would be the last possible date that we could include this in the reconstruction? Through
the chair, just a point of clarification. So you're interested in working it into this project.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to we're depending on how council directs staff to move forward. If we were to move forward and the $550,000 was approved, we would move immediately to start building, so we don't lose the construction. So we do put everything in place. So we would almost need the money immediately, the funding immediately in order to move forward.
Or a commitment to the money.
Excuse me?
Or a commitment to the money. If you knew that there was a commitment to that funding.
Mm-hmm. Or a commitment, yes.
Okay. I thought I'd ask the question. Thank you.
Councillor
Davies.
Comments?
Thank you. Just Terry, quick point of clarification, if I could, on the dividing wall. I recall, is it just because the Stanley Park one was so much larger? But I recall there was a much larger dollar value attached to a dividing wall at Stanley Park, like in the range of $200,000. So, is it just because the gym's larger at that location?
Through the chair, there were 2 dividing walls
that would explain it. Yeah. Okay, so 100,000 each. Next, my only other question is, just because I'm seeing a bit of a trend, how common is it for us to pre-allocate development charges, and is that a good standard practice?
Go ahead, Ryan.
It is not something that we commonly do, and there's this report. Obviously, the next report is in the same ballpark, but it is not a common practice for us to do. It bears some risk because it essentially is assuming the outcome of our next DC study in some way, shape, and form.
Okay, so the only risk would be then, for some reason, if it was determined that that couldn't fit in, then we'd be on the hook for the difference in these 2 projects.
Or deferring other projects.
Or deferring other projects, okay. Okay, that's my only question. I'd have a brief comment as well, Madam Chair.
Okay. There are no further questions, so we are in comments. Councillor Fernandez, did you want to go first or last? Okay. Councillor Davey?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to see this before us. So I'll be honest, when I read the report, typically around this horseshoe, we would have seen a lot of concern about this project being so far over budget, and with the number of changes that were in it, I was expecting calls for this to be retendered. I'm not sure what's different about this one, but I'm happy to see it. Sounds like there's some sort of uniformity in terms of the support for this project, and I'm happy to see it go forward.
Mayor Verbanovic.
Thank you very much. I too am very happy to see this report here and see the support of the Neighborhood Association. I think we found ourselves in an interesting set of circumstances because we were looking to move everything along in a timely manner and keep everything as closed as quickly as possible. So we were moved out, ready to go. Tender comes in, and then all of a sudden we had a bit of a major oopsie. The challenge obviously was, how do we deal with it? And I think a lot of good work has been done to find a solution that can work, that allows us to put some added dollars into the project, but doesn't compromise any of the fundamental key parts of the project, and recognizes that some of the others we'll be able to add on over time. I think we need to remind ourselves that when we did the last development charges background study, this was the #1 indoor leisure facility priority in terms of the expansion for the Dune Pioneer Park Community Center. And I think with its partnership that exists with the library there as well, I think the sooner we can get this moving again and get the project going forward so that both of those services can continue to serve the community in a meaningful way, the better off everyone will be, in particular the neighborhood. So I will be wholeheartedly supporting this, urge council to do the same, and thank staff for all of the good work that's gone into getting it to this point, so that we're not having to go the retender route that Councillor Davey talked about, because quite frankly I believe that would only probably result in a worse situation than we're contemplating now.
Councillor Yunetsky.
Yeah, it's rather unfortunate that the budget the tender came up way over budget, and it's unfortunate that this is the situation we're in today. However, I'm glad to see that the group from the association are here to defend their cause, and look forward to the expansion. It's also unfortunate that they've been delayed several times over the past many years, and I think it's time to bite the bullet and move forward. I mean, it's not a big bullet to bite, but it's a bit of negotiations and cutbacks that have been done with staff, which I think is quite appropriate. I'm satisfied with it, so I feel very strongly to support it, and let's move forward as quickly as we can.
Yvonne, do you want to go last? Yes, please. Councillor Innes.
Thank you, Madam Chair Galloway Seelock. Yeah, initially when I looked at this, I was concerned about the reduction in the gym height, but I didn't realize, because I know with pickleball and all that stuff, that's one of the big concerns in the neighborhood associations in the area I represent. As far as the delegates, I think it's your lucky day today, because we were talking about winter sidewalk removal. I think council thinks it's Christmas today, so.
Councillor Gonzalez.
Yeah, I generally get concerned when a project goes over, to the tune of $500,000, but I think there's been good explanation on this. The other issue is that they have waited a long time here, and it's time that we moved ahead with this project. I think the community is picking up the pieces. Somehow I would even hope that we find so many dollars here and there that we could find another few dollars so that we could do the job right and put that dividing wall in. So I think it's been a long time coming. I am also fully realize that Mill Cortland has been in the waiting wings, and Rockway Center for a number of years, and I'm hopeful that this can move ahead and not have any impact with them. So as far as we're concerned at this point, I'm fully prepared to support the project and hopefully get moving on it.
Councillor Fernandez.
Well, thank you. As long as I've been a councillor in this ward, this is what I heard about. As our community has grown and expanded, the list of waiting lists for programs and the need for more, the splash pad that was more of a sprinkler system, it was an ongoing concern. And so I think that I have to thank Mr. Hildebrand and the project team who worked really hard on trying to find how to build a community center out of something that was existing. I think there were some challenges that you overcame, which were pretty significant. The original design didn't really prepare us for a renovation on this site, and sometimes I wonder if it would have been better to knock the whole thing down and start again. But that said, I think we've come a long way and we've done some remarkable work, and I don't mean we as in me, I think you as a community, you as staff have done some remarkable work, and especially around trying to find the money and how, and to talk to the contractor on how we can make those changes. I have to tell you, I'm still not happy about that dividing wall not being there, and although Councillor Yanetsky assures me it's not always that used, and Mr. Hildebrand said the same, if I could put out some feelers for $60,000, I'll sure be trying to do that in the next 24 to 48 hours. Our community is growing and it is becoming extremely diverse. We will grow by thousands of households, but those households are significantly different than they were 4 years and than they were 8 years when I became a councillor. They are multi-generational. So we need a community center that can service young children and youth and couples and mature adults and seniors. And that's what this community center needs to be. I know we're not going to be fulfilling all the requests that people have asked, and I've seen on Facebook that where's the pool and why aren't we putting a pool in here? But the reality is that site was never prepared for a pool. So we're doing a wonderful job at the splash pad. Splash pads appeal to everybody, all ages and all abilities, and I think that that's going to be a wonderful asset to our community. I look forward to the vote, and I would ask for a recorded vote on this one, please, and look forward to the hoarding going up as soon as possible. Thank you so much.
All right, that's all the comments, so we'll call the question. Yeah, recorded vote's already been called, sorry. Ooh. I was distracted. That's carried unanimously. Now turn the chair over to Councillor Marsh.
Okay. All right, so Mr. Hildebrand has already shared his perspective on this item, so we can start with questions of staff. Or do we have any delegations on this item? No? Okay. All right. Do we have a mover for this item? Okay. Councillor Galloway Seelock. All right, questions of staff? Councillor Gazzola.
Is this project in our capital forecast now?
Through you, Chair Marsh, no, it's not.
So it's a brand-new community center, in addition to what's already in our capital forecast?
That is correct.
Is it the next in line, or?
Excuse me?
Was it the next in line, or?
Through the chair, no, this was not part of, this was part of the 2016 business plan, and I was given direction staff was given direction to move forward and look at possible partnerships. So this was a result of that investigation.
Okay. Just one other quick question. When we get into this, I gather we will make is there a gym in this too, as in the other one?
Through the chair, if I understand your question correctly, within the 8,000 square feet that we would build onto this facility is a single gym in addition to the double gymnasium that the school is building.
I just want to make the point. So the single gym, we won't go for we shouldn't be going for high roofs now in community centers, because the standard is the lower roof, right? So we don't even start out with a high roof, so we don't have to cut anything down the road. Am I correct in my thinking? Or what are we looking at?
So through the chair, we're looking at a standard a standard community center. However, we haven't had those discussions with the school board about heights of gymnasiums or things like that, so I can't comment on that right now.
Okay, but I guess our standard is now established with not high roofs. Okay, thank you.
Next we have Councillor Fernandez.
Thanks. Just a little bit of clarification on the report on 9-2. You're talking about, in addition to the facility space, there are following additional areas considered for the site: parking area, student drop-off, softscape for the playground, and hardscape for the playground. I'm not talking about the soccer pitch just yet. Those would be normal additions to a school site, would they not?
Through the chair, that's correct. That's part of a normal school site. What the site fit study was doing was just making sure that everything can fit on the site. So indeed, when they did the analysis, all these elements could fit on the site.
Okay, because you broke them out, and I was thinking, well, wait a minute, that seems like a logical part to building the school. So it would be there already. It would have been in the school board's budget already to put these items in. It's just that as a community center, we'll be able to benefit from what the school board would have been putting in.
Yes.
Okay. And the soccer pitch, is it really a soccer pitch? Or so I'm thinking about St. Kateri School, which has a sort of a multi-use field where there's a soccer pitch, uses a football field. Is that kind of what we'd be looking at as well, or would it be smaller or bigger than what's out there?
Through the chair, it's my understanding through the school board that this is going to be a regulation-sized soccer pitch. Let me rephrase that, not FIFA regulation side, but a regular-sized soccer pitch that we have at schools.
But it would be multiple use, would it not? Or would it just be only earmarked for a soccer pitch? I'm just trying to, I think that because we're partnering with the school, there may be a need for other community members to use that green space?
I think Mr. May has an addition to this question.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. I was going to jump in with Councillor Gazzola's questions. I think one of the fundamental principles we need to understand with this community center is it's not a City of Kitchener building. Unlike all of our other community centers, we get to dictate the site plan, the height of a gymnasium, the size and markings on a soccer pitch. This is a school board facility to which we will be building on a certain amount of space for a community center. So one of the things we're all going to have to wrap our head around, and I include staff in that, is we'll have less control over things like are being asked here today.
Okay. That's about the building, but it's not about the field. But the field would be used for the community at large as well.
Through the chair, the field is on school property. It'll be it's used as they use these facilities in other schools.
Right. Okay. All right. I think that was all the questions I had. I'll have comments.
All right. You'll have to cue back in when it's time, please. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Marsh. I love the fact that we're partnering with the school board here because I've seen the benefits of the partnership between the Stanley Park Community Center and St. Daniel's School. I'm just wondering if you could maybe refresh us of some of the benefits of the partnership that we have there, just so we're clear of not just the cost savings, but the benefits to both sides.
Through a point of clarification, at Stanley Park, you're interested in what
at
the benefits?
Stanley Park, yeah, just because it obviously would spread.
Sure. So at Stanley Park, through the chair, at Stanley Park, the biggest benefit that we have is access to a triple gymnasium, which is very significant for the neighborhood association and programming in the community. As well as that, we also benefit from the church. We share parking facilities. We share the school outside facilities. The school at times can use the gymnasium for bigger events that they have with their schools and with parents. So there's a number of co-benefits that associate with at Stanley Park. With this proposed partnership, there's also two other partners that are involved, which is the Provincial Early On Centers, which provides support to parents and children, who also will have about 8,000 square feet at this facility. So the YMCA runs the Early On Centers, and they are very interested in seeing what we could do together as a community center, Early On Center. As well as the Early On Center, the Region of Waterloo will have a child care at this facility as well. So it could really be a substantial community hub in the south end of Kitchener.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks. We have Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Madam Chair, the same question maybe to Mr. Hagee. Could you explain to me any possible impact on the Milcoulton Community Centre by going ahead with this particular one?
So through the chair, the answer remains the same with this, assuming that what our development charge consultants have suggested will happen in the next DC study. In fact, that we can increase our indoor recreation funding by $5 million, there would be no impact on any other facility for financial reasons.
Thank you.
Next, we have Councillor Yanetsky.
Mr. Hagee, in terms of your answer to Councillor Etherington's question, I'm a little puzzled as to how that would work, because in regards to development charges, when we got the new study that's scheduled to start in 2019 to replace the existing one, going for another 5-year term period, you allocate projects that will be development charge oriented and how much the cost would be, and you also prioritize them in the study. But there's also a certain amount of money that is in the development charge kitty that comes in from builders through building permit time periods. Yet we have at many times here around the Horseshoe over the last year or two provided letters of, not letters of credit, but
Credit refund agreements?
Fund and financing to allow them to extend trunk services or something so they can proceed, which is totally understandable. But if they're doing all that, then there's no money coming into the kitty, which means some of these things can't get processed as quickly as intended. That's the way I see it, or unless I am wrong. Help me out here.
So through the chair, the credit refund agreements provide credits to developers on that specific service, not DCs as a whole. So most of the ones we've been dealing with are sanitary sewer related, so we will not be receiving sanitary sewer funds from those developments in the near future, but we'll be receiving all of the other DC pieces, including indoor recreation.
Hard services versus soft services.
Correct. Well, but in this case, it's just the one. We will still get the roads portion. We would still get public works, but we will also get indoor rec, outdoor rec, library, all of those from those new developments. So while we have credit refund agreements with developers for sanitary sewer services or roads like the Strasbourg Road, that will not impact the amount of funding. It will not have a negative impact on the amount of funding coming in for indoor recreation. In fact, it may provide more funding for those because now we have more homes coming online sooner that will be providing us more money for development charges related to indoor rec.
So right now in the development charge bylaw, this particular project is not in there.
Correct.
And it's going to be, it's intended to be inserted in the next 5-year program.
Yes.
It'd be the first priority that would be addressed as opposed to the others, or is it just a matter of timing when each project comes through tenders?
Through the chair, that will be something that will have to come through for Leisure Facilities Master Plan and the next DC study as far as the priorities. My understanding is the timeline on this is fairly quick, so we may have to, in conjunction with the school board, may have to make a commitment to them financially before we have the outcomes of the next, potentially of the Leisure Facilities Master Plan update or the DC study.
Okay, and the last question, whoever wants to answer it, is that it was mentioned this is a school project and we're just not total ownership of it. They are, but we're just a party to it. What is their priority in terms of how soon do they want to build?
Through the chair, it's my belief that they are waiting to see direction from council and whether or not we're going to be participating, and then once we're ready, they will move forward with the understanding that we're going to be a partner if that's the way we go.
And if we weren't going to be partners, would they still proceed without us?
Through the chair, they received funding from the province for that school in January of this year. So yes, I would assume that they would proceed without us if we said no, we're not interested.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, next we have Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah, just a couple questions. Are you aware, is the city park attached to this site?
Through the chair, yes, the city has adjacent lands to the Tartan site.
Okay, thank you for that. And just to be clear, the cost savings, if we do it with the school board, it would cost us 2.9, and if we did it on our own, it would be 4.1.
Through the chair, it would be at least 4.1.
Okay. Well, and we're seeing that some are coming in over budget. So was Kingsdale Community Center, when it was contemplated, was it next in line, or did it, when the opportunity presented itself, we moved on it because we needed to? And was it at all part of bumping the Dune expansion?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, we did. When the opportunity came up with the decommissioning of the previous Patrick Doherty Arena, it's my recollection that we did move that forward a couple of years in the forecast.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions. I have comments at the appropriate time.
Okay, there appear to be no further questions, so for comments, please queue in. Councillor Fernandez, you said that you had comments first. Do you want to go first?
Not necessarily. Okay.
Not necessarily? All right, cue back in, please. All right, Mayor Verbanovic.
Well, thank you very much. And again, I want to thank staff for the work that has been done on this proposal. I will be supporting this proposal wholeheartedly as well, and I'll be doing so for a number of reasons. Number one, we have found when we've had opportunities to partner with schools, and Stanley Park is one great example of that in terms of the community center, but also in terms of the partnerships we have with Grand River Collegiate and Country Hills, along with Kitchener Public Library. We've found that those partnerships work very well for everybody concerned. Now, you know, there's no doubt that from time to time, just like in any family or in any relationship, there's probably, you know, there are these little moments that come up where somebody needs a space or someone wants something or whatever, and we need to work it out. But that's part of what community is all about. But overall, in anybody I talk to at those facilities, our experience has been nothing short of positive. This opportunity, I think, to partner with this school in a part of the city that's rapidly growing, and no signs of that slowing down anytime in the near future, based on, quite frankly, partially the cost of real estate down the highway, only means that we're going to need to ensure that we have the services in place to support this part of the community going forward. And we know full well that if we weren't going to be able to do this in the partnership that's proposed, the costs would be significantly more, and so that is an advantage to our ratepayer as well. So it really, in many ways, ends up being a double win. Now, there will be no doubt some that say, you know what, this opportunity was not in the priorities at the moment, but these opportunities don't always come up in line with our leisure facilities master plan reports, and when they do, we need to consider them on their own merit, much like we did with the Country Hills Library when that opportunity presented itself at St. Mary's High School. There wasn't time, there wasn't money at that time, but we found a way to make it work, and I think that's what we're doing here as well, in a way that is responsible, is prudent, and doesn't end up having a negative impact on the other projects that are in question as well. So I would hope that as a council we support this, and that we can see this new facility move forward and see it open as is being projected in 2020, which would certainly be a real win for I think for the city as a whole, and particularly the southwest part of the city, and the residents in that area. And as we know, when these new centers open, they don't tend to just bring people from that immediate area. They're the primary user. But as I think Councillor Schneider asked and heard in his questions about the Dune Pioneer Park Centre, and as we see at Stanley Park and elsewhere, those you end up getting users from around the city depending on program offerings and so on. So those would be my comments.
Thank you. Next we have Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Marsh. I'm really happy to see this proposal coming forward. I think, partnerships like this allow both sides to have a great facility at decreased costs to both. I have seen the benefits of the Stanley Park Community Center, St. Daniel's School, St. Daniel's Church. The Neighbors' Day celebration there was off the chart with everybody, the community center, community association, St. Daniel's Church, St. Daniel's School. The whole space was completely animated, and there was so much good going on. And while, we as councillors, we pay attention to our wards, to me, our community centers are just an absolute wonderful part of our community. We're so blessed to have them and the great community associations within them, providing some awesome programming. And I really believe that this area and the citizens of Ward 4 and 5 really, will use this. It is a need, and it can be used across the city. I know the range of programmings they're able to put on, and with our web reg now, you can register for programs right across the city. It's such an important part of who we are as a city. I'm really proud to support this. I just think it's amazing, and it's a great way to help out everybody. A school is a meeting area, connecting area too, and when you combine that with a community center, it just doubles the benefits.
Thank you. Next we have Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you. It's not often that we have opportunities like this where we do community building, and lots of other community centers have been mentioned in the conversation today. One of the things I've been always saying is when we can partner with a school or with a library to build a community center, then we really should be looking at that. And so this is a great opportunity to do that. That area is not only growing, but I think it will serve Ward 4 as well, even though it's incorrectly named on here because it will be located in Ward 5, but I think we'll be drawing from all across the community, and I think that's really important. I do think that I look at Mill Courtland Community Center as priority 3 and wonder if maybe consideration in the next budget cycle that maybe we should be looking at moving that up into a priority 2, just for conversation's sake. I think it would be worthwhile. This community center will only serve a segment of the population out in Ward 5, and there will be a need for another community center in a short time after that. But I think for conversation, and there has been a long waiting and standing request for the Mill Courtland Community Center to grow and expand as well. So it might be worth having that conversation to see around the next budget cycle to see if we could revisit some priorities. I look forward to seeing us do more of this. When a school has been, and we don't know how many more schools we can build in this community because we're getting pretty full. But whether we build it with an aquatic center, or and we look at Rockaway, build it with a senior center and possible businesses or commercial or living space. Partnerships, I think, are much better than standalones. And I know that we're standalone at Dune Pioneer Park Community Center, but we have our library, who I think is really a wonderful partner. So I will be supporting this.
Thank you. And I guess the good news is that our staff are in the process of the leisure facilities master plan, so we can then get some guidance from that on what goes on the capital forecast, in what order. All right, next we have Councillor Gazzola.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Today, I will not support the project that's before us. I have a concern about 2022, two community centers opening in one ward, all around the same time. But that's not my major concern. If it's workable, I'm prepared when we deal with it next Monday to support it. My biggest concern right now is where we're going with the development charges in the future. Now, I spent considerable amount of time last night because there's a very detailed report in our package dealing with the development charges. And if you look at the first page of it, it's got an awful lot of brackets around it. Now, I spent a considerable amount of time last night, and I just couldn't seem to get anywhere on it. I don't know if it was that second glass of Father's Day wine that I had or not, but I need to, and we're not going to be able to know for sure coming down the road. That's because that won't happen till later on, but I just need to be sure that we can manage this. It's coming in out of order, and that's fine. But I want to make sure that we can manage this within our development charge fund. So I intend to take, at this time, I'm not going to support it. I intend to do my homework during the week to see where we're going, and hopefully I'll be able to support it on Monday when it comes here for ratification.
Thank you. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Whenever anything significant capital project comes up that's outside of our forecast, it is a red flag for me. Red flag in the sense that we got to look at it very closely. Mostly because we do have significant infrastructure challenges, and one of the ways to make sure that we can manage that going forward is to be extremely careful on the infrastructure that we build. So I'm going to support this, and I can justify it in two ways. Even though it wasn't in our capital forecast, I think it's pretty evident that the need is there. So in other words, I think this was going to happen eventually anyway. And more importantly, partnering with the school board is, I think, the absolute most efficient way we can go about dealing with providing this service. So even though it's a bit out of step with how we typically do things, I do think that it's one of those strike with the iron while the iron's hot sort of opportunities, and I will support it.
Thank you. Councillor Yanetsky.
In light of the questions I asked Mr. Hagee with regards to development charges, that's why I had concerns in regards to funding source and whether there will be adequate funding in the future based on front-end financing that we're doing throughout the city. I appreciated his answer, although I still have some reservations. I want to still research this a little further. I do believe in the partnerships. I think they are good opportunities to do things together. And having considered where this is going, I'm prepared at this point in time to support it and do some more research on this.
Thank you. Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Chair Marsh, Madam Chair Marsh. The way I look at this is sometimes when opportunities present a community to find significant efficiencies and partner with another organization that shares similar interests in the community, such as the school board and wanting to build a better community. I think it's important that we act on these and move forward with these. Granted, it may be not in the position that we want with other capital projects, but these come once in a while, and it's important that we take them on and move forward and create a better quality of life for the residents.
Okay, and before I take Councillor Galloway-Sealock's comments, I'll just make my own. I want to say kudos to Councillor Galloway-Sealock for pushing for finding a way to advocate for this project to move forward, and to staff for finding an outside-of-the-box solution that is going to save the taxpayer dollars money, and also to move forward on providing a community amenity that's been desired for a long time. Councillor Galloway-Sealock.
So I will be pretty quick in just saying a huge thank you to staff. It's taken a little while and a lot of time to get here, but I appreciate all the hard work that you've put into bringing this forward and making this come to fruition. But I also want to say that this is such a great partnership. The opportunity to have 3 gyms, plus partner with the Early On Center, which might give us another 8,000 square feet. Plus we have our own 8,000 square feet, and then another daycare that has 8,000 square feet. Just imagine what we can accomplish with that size. and at a price that is cheaper than the Stanley Park Community Center, the Kingsdale Community Center, and the Dune expansion. We're getting a deal. It's like community centers on sale. And I think that we need to move on this opportunity. It's a hugely underserviced area. Ward 5 currently has no permanent community centers, and it's just going to continue to grow. In fact, we're dealing with tonight planning another subdivision that's going to border where this community center will go, and another whole subdivision that's got hundreds of lots and hundreds of families that are going to move in on top of everything that's going to happen down in Rosenberg. And so I really do think that this is an opportunity that we can't give up. And one other point that I just wanted to make is that I promised when we dealt with this last that it wouldn't affect other community centers' funding. And I'm happy that staff were able to do that with this funding solution. I really appreciate the out-of-the-box thinking on the funding solution, and that you were able to withhold the promise that I had made to committee when this came forward last time. So I really appreciate the comments that I've heard so far and the support of committee to move this forward.
Thank you.
Recorded vote, please.
Recorded vote has been called.
Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. All right. We have some information for that. My understanding is Councillor Marsh would like to discuss.
Yes. I wanted to move to bring, I just have a question about the business plan status update.
Okay. Do we need a motion to bring that out of information? Yes. Okay. So it's moved by Councillor Marsh to do that. Those in favor? I need some hands. Those in favor to move it out of? Opposed? That's carried. There is none opposed, so I'm going to take it as everybody's in favor.
All right. So thanks. I want to thank staff for the update on the business plan projects. And I wanted to ask about the performance measures, the targets for our performance indicators. I noticed that in our Kitchener 2017 business plan, we had some beautifully laid out performance measures and targets for some of our core business areas, core service performance areas, but not for others. And so I'm just wondering, what is the plan for that, and when can we expect to see the full complement of targets and measurements?
Mr. Chapman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Councillor Marsh, for giving me a heads up on the question. I had a chance at the break to confer with staff. As I'm sure you're well aware, there are many organizations that implement key results indicators that have no utility at all for the organization. It becomes a compliance effort, but they're not used for any decision making. And so we were determined to take a more thoughtful approach when we introduced them here at the city. We knew some areas very quickly already had measures or could easily identify them, but for others it was a greater challenge, and so we decided that we would implement them across all of the core services over a period of 3 or 4 years. So that's why you see some areas have them, some areas don't. And in terms of the targets, the approach that we decided to take was to allow at least 1 year of data to be gathered for the results indicators before targets are set. For 2 reasons. One, we want to ensure on one hand that they're realistic against actual results, but also that when we set a stretch target, it's also a reasonable stretch goal. And so we felt by having a year of data, at least 1 year of data behind us, that would help us to set a better target. So to answer your question, we would expect that by the 2020 business plan, all core services will have KRIs as well as targets.
Thank you. And then, so also, are the targets and performance measures intended to be outcomes or a mix of outputs and outcomes? Like, what are we? I'm noticing it's not necessarily consistent. So I'm glad to hear that the idea is to put some thought into it and really just make sure that it's where you want it to be. But I just wanted to flag that. Maybe you know the answer off the top of your head.
I don't, and I think given that we have new leadership in Laurie Major's role, Karen Cooper joined us 2 weeks ago now, and I'm new to my role, I think we'll take some time as we head into the new strategic plan just to revisit and make sure that we have a consistent and a meaningful philosophy around what the KRIs are intended to do. So I can't give you a definitive answer today except to say that will be certainly on our radar.
That sounds great. Just back from my Compass Kitchener days, I remember that there were no performance indicators, and so now, at the time that I knew of, and but now we're moving towards that, and I'm really glad to see it, and to see some meaningful data come back, not to make more work, but to just follow through with our goals that we've set for ourselves of accountability and transparency. I think that we need to make sure that the collection and evaluation is not onerous on our staff. That's not the goal, but just to make sure that we are being useful as much as possible and setting higher goals for ourselves as we achieve our previous goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, we are adjourned.